Friday 5 on tap now. Let's welcome back our co-host from the first segment, the Admiral Bill Stubblefield.
Good morning, Dylan. Great to be here.
And New York Times bestselling author John Gilstrap.
Good morning.
And we'll welcome in the rest of the Friday 5, the senior member of the crew, longest tenured member of the crew, Mr. Michael Carl. How's it going?
Yeah, senior in terms of number of years, not in terms of priority. Or authority. Thank you for anyway.
Former member of the House of Delegates, Vietnam War veteran, Mr. John Doyle.
Good morning, and Mike Carl is the longest tenured. That means he gets the longest leash of all of us.
We have a lot of fun here. Yesterday was fun with Doyle and Gilstrap, and I'm glad we get to add a couple more to the mix over here. And our leadoff hitter is on the phone, Mr. Joe Ferretti. How's it going this morning, Mr. Ferretti?
Good morning, Dylan. I'm doing great. Glad to be on the show. I think I'm by video and phone.
Yes.
Correct?
Yep. Watching on TV 10 or the Facebook stream, you can see Mr. Ferretti as well.
Well, I hope so. I got cleaned up this morning, so.
Yeah.
Dylan, he's got the same. He's got the same color shirt you got.
Just about, yeah. Now, I heard last week's show, and I will say I made pants mandatory this week. I can't enforce that on Joe, but.
Yeah, I'm not gonna stand up.
I heard you were a stand-up guy.
Well, maybe, but I will not be standing up for the show this morning. That's for sure.
Because we'll see how many think he's a stand-up guy after today. He's leading off with our first segment, first topic, Mr. Ferretti.
Okay, well, thank you. My apologies to the panel this morning. I switched topics. I hope you all got my message about 7 a.m. I could not resist covering the president's speech last night to a primetime audience. So I've ditched my topics, and I want to cover that. And I'm wondering, guys, as I recall what the president talked about last evening for about 30 minutes in primetime television, what to make of the speech last night. It's given at a time that we're at war. AI is transforming our lives. Everything costs a lot more. And now apparently our soldiers are suffering from low testosterone. So I just wondered if this is a timely speech and something that we should give a lot of time and attention to, or if it's just, and using the old phrase, a nothing burger. In covering the president's speech, there's 5 main topics that he brought up, and I just want to touch on them briefly to hopefully engender some discussion this morning. Number one, he claimed again that the 2020 election was rigged and stolen. As I have often done on this show, I recommend that people read the exhaustive study, Lost But Not Stolen. And this was a study done by one of the Republican attorney, Ben Ginsburg, and some retired federal judges who looked at the numerous 60-plus civil cases that were filed over the 2020 election. Again, it's an exhaustive study, and it concludes that we can debunk any claims that the 2020 election was rigged, lost, stolen, whatever you want to claim. The fact is that there is nothing that has been brought forth in the way of evidence to prove that charge. And my conclusion was that cannot be the basis for any change in the election laws going forward. Secondly, he claimed that there was China meddling in our election. And let's draw a distinction here. Foreign governments do try to influence our elections. That's been going on for decades. We try to influence elections in their countries. And that's what happens. But influence is not an impact. It's not proof of an impact. And there has been no evidence to date that any foreign actor has changed tabulations, has changed the outcomes of elections. So the China meddling, I think, is a red herring. There's been Russian meddling. There's been meddling by North Korea, Iran, all the rogue state actors that you can come up with. Again, can't be the basis for any change in the election laws. Thirdly, the president claimed that there's approximately 270,000 non-citizens registered to vote. I will let you know that immediately after that claim was made on television, a group called the Center for Election Innovation and Research, which has studied that issue and actually came up with the numbers that the president's talking about. They concluded that those numbers are highly inflated. Number one, there's a lot of cross-referencing there. There's a lot of inclusion of people who are actually naturalized citizens. Maybe they weren't born here, but they became citizens and they registered for vote. Somehow they got caught up in this study. Bottom line is this group said that you can't rely on those numbers. And in fact, the number of non-citizens registered to vote works out to less than 0.1% of all registered voters in the country. And I'm sure our state election officials and our county clerks are working diligently to find out who those people are and get them off our rolls. Again, can't be the basis for any change in the law. And finally, the president come forward and said, look, we got to pass this Save America Act. It's been shown time and again that he is failing in that effort. He tried to attach it to a defense bill. That failed. He tried to hold up the housing bill and refused to sign it to get Congress to take up the Save American Act. That failed. He has argued for the senators to get rid of the filibuster to pass the Save America Act. That failed. He's jawboning everybody he comes across right now about this new law, and that is failing. So this was a Hail Mary attempt on national television to try to get the public to get behind him, and I believe that's going to fail. It's not going to work to try to pass laws now, such as the Save America Act, 3 months out from an election. Okay, if you're going to require people to prove their citizenship, you better have the mechanism to do it so that the proper voters are still allowed to vote. And we're not going to be able to do it in 3 months. You're not going to change the system. You're not going to get states to get rid of their mail-in ballots, as the Save America Act does require. We can't make these changes in 3 months. So if you want to debate the appropriateness of such a bill, you better have a mechanism for doing it, and you better not try to rush it through, because it's going to create a lot of problems going forward. So while it might be a debate to have, a legitimate argument could be made for it, let's have the proper mechanisms in place to institute any such law. You're not going to do it before this November election, which, by the way, is President Trump's aim. So the bottom line here is, from the speech last night, my conclusion is it was a lot of the same old stuff regurgitated regarding the 2020 election and the fact he can't accept the notion that he lost that election. And secondly, the prescription here is it's certainly not timely, and it's certainly something we're not going to be able to implement to save him from what verdict is going to be rendered by the 2026 election. So to me, that's the upshot of this presentation by the president last night. I'm wondering what everybody else thinks.
Election integrity came up yesterday in the discussion between John Gilstrap and John Doyle. So let's start with the two that were not a part of that conversation. First with Mr. Carl.
Well, I went to a garden club dinner party with my wife and my closest friend, Hoy Singleton. So I missed the speech, but I probably wouldn't have watched it anyway, because I think I don't support Trump because of what he says. In fact, I'm not happy with a lot of what he says. I'm very much support the substance of what he does. So that's the best I can say about that.
You have anything on that 2020 election, if the election integrity in general? That's been a topic for a while.
No, I think I'm skeptical about election integrity generally, but I think he should not, he should move on to today, and he is in a lot of important ways, but that's still something he worries about. But I think that's behind us.
Bill Stubblefield.
We talked about election integrity, and there's kind of a question mark inserted behind it that we question election integrity. Where do we get to the point that we accept that the 2020 election was correct? Everything we've looked at would say it was a legitimate election. Yet we keep throwing this kind of opaque question mark behind it that casts doubt, but there's been no evidence that would suggest that anything is wrong with it. As far as last night's speech, I thought, Joe, you did a nice job of framing it. I watched much of it, and I kept waiting for when is the meaningful shoe to be dropped. It never was dropped. It made some implied references that the Chinese gain millions and millions of voters' records. Well, you did not have to go to China to get them. These are all public information. They include your address, your telephone number, and your party registration. These are available anywhere you want to go. So why had a 30-minute talk about how dastardly the Chinese are treating us when you can just go on the internet and get all this information? I thought, and I think you framed it right, Joe. It's only trying to put some pressure to get our congressman to pass the SAVE Act. I don't think it's going to happen. There's not enough Republican votes. Certainly the Democrats are not going to vote for it. So was the whole exercise last night, I thought, was just to try to strong-arm Congress to pass the SAVE Act. But there was no new evidence about it. They kept saying all this new data that's going to be presented. People that looked at the data said nothing's new. It's been around the whole time.
John Gilstrap.
Hey, Bill.
Oh, let Joe jump in. Yep.
I'm sorry, John. Before John begins, I just want to follow up on what Bill said. The one bit of evidence he argued about with regard to Chinese influencing elections had to do with the Maduro election in Venezuela. I don't understand how that's relevant to what we're doing here in this country. Venezuela, they have an entire different system regarding how they run their elections. So I didn't find that very persuasive either.
Mr. Gilstrap.
I don't understand the president's obsession with the 2020 election. I think that it's a narrative that undercuts everything he's trying to do. I think it's poisoned. That's the narrative that has poisoned the SAVE Act. I think that I don't get it. Clearly, he does not listen to his advisors, who I'm sure would tell him that that's not a great thing to do. And Joe, just as an aside, assuming that 200 million people vote, 0.1% is 20,000 people. So it's not an insignificant number. If in fact we're just going to stipulate that that's the number of false votes that were cast, we've seen, as a practical matter, the election of 2020 if you boil it down through the different counties that are involved, it really came. The decision was made in 2020. Every election, really, it comes down to a couple of key counties here and there. And in 2020, the number I've heard is 42,000. So if theoretically, hypothetically, 20,000 is half of that number that would decide, and I'm not suggesting that that's what actually happened. As far as what the president is saying, I'm probably more apt to give him the benefit of the doubt than others here at the table. But, I haven't seen his declassified docs that are supposed to prove all of this. He certainly has a history of raising expectations only to have them dashed later. But I don't know. I think influence in the elections, I said this yesterday, I think that foreign influence, union influence, special interest influence, rich people influence, poor people influence, racial influences, all of them do their very best to put their thumbs on the scales of elections. And once it gets baked into the cake, the system works as haltingly as it does. The system works. But I think the last minute changes that were largely justified by COVID it kind of shook people up, and it gave it made good fodder for conspiracy theorists, right? And anytime when something is as dear as the American elections are concerned, that kind of doubt is inherently poisonous. When you have narratives that are pushed actively by media, whether it's right-wing media or left-wing media, I've said before that I think the internet is the ruination of the world. Everybody has a voice. Social media certainly doesn't help at all. So I think it's a mistake to completely dismiss concerns about voter integrity, and to fight so hard against the SAVE Act, which would provide an extra measure of voter integrity, albeit with unproven systems. I don't understand why we don't want people to show identification to vote. That just makes no sense to me whatsoever when I consider what I do have to show identification for in order to do other things. And I don't think the push is really about getting this done for 2026. I think the infrastructure you're talking about, Joe, could easily be done for 2028, and that's the big one.
But John, you have to show registration. You have to show some sort of identification to vote.
Well, apparently you don't. Here you do. I don't understand.
No, you do in every state.
You do in every state.
Every state you have to show some identification.
Then
it's a registration that's more so than actual voting itself. That's the issue of what required to register.
Oh, well, okay. You need to prove your citizenry
and
in order to.
They do. But
apparently not.
But apparently not by who standard.
Understand, guys, that under the Save America Act, if you showed up at a polling place with your driver's license, that would be insufficient to vote. Do you understand that? That a photo ID in and of itself is insufficient under the proposed law. You also have to have proof of citizenship. And the problem we have, and this is why Republican senators are not getting behind this en masse, is because state county clerks and state election officials are warning them. They're traditionally underfunded as it is. They're telling the senators, we don't have the resources to change horses in the middle of the stream here. We're not going to be able to implement programs to make sure people are citizens, to have them show up with a passport or a birth certificate to establish their citizenship in time for these upcoming elections.
All right, so
that's the issue.
So if you put a sunrise date on this and you set it out, pick a number, whatever makes you comfortable, 3 years, 4 years, sometime after 2028. If you establish the law, you can always make the systems that make the law enforceable, right? So I have this real ID. I was shocked to find out that doesn't show that I'm an American citizen. I don't know why I had to jump through all the hoops to get the real ID just to show. I'm not sure what it shows actually, but I know it gets me through TSA really, really quickly now, and I'm all over that. Whatever it is that made the change. But if we make the decision that this is what we're going to do, that this is the law of the land, we can always make the system work. So I think that we need to take a kind of a dynamic analysis to this instead of a static analysis. Just because it wouldn't work today or between now and November doesn't mean that it's a bad program per se.
Let's get Mr. Doyle in on the conversation.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with voter ID. I mean, but the problem, except that this is the responsibility of the states. Each individual state has to decide what it needs to prove that you are eligible to vote. And the problem, the problem is if you try to make this system so perfect that nobody's going to slip through, the only way it's going to happen is if you end up with a system that bans a number of legitimate voters from voting. You can't come up with the perfect system. And I think our system is good enough now that it's the old conservative saw, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Our system is not broke. The problem with, and I do think now, there are some ominous things about what I heard in the speech last night. I think there is a possibility the president is laying groundwork for sending federal troops into certain states this November to keep Democrats from voting. I also think it's possible that he's laying the groundwork that when the Republicans lose at least the House and I think maybe the Senate, that he claims everything was fixed and rigged, just like he claims everything is that he loses. And as I said yesterday, I just think it's ironic that he ran 3 times, he won twice when there was a Democratic president and a Democratic CIA director and a Democratic DNI director in charge of all this. The only time he lost was when he was in charge.
So we got about 5 minutes left in the segment.
Yeah, let me build up on, and I'm glad John Doyle mentioned that, because I was going to and I forgot about it. Was I think that more so than trying to promote the SAVE Act, trying to promote anything else, the president is trying to position himself for an argument if the election does not go the way he would like for it to go.
Let's go to Joe Ferretti.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with John Gilstrap here in terms of the necessity to have this debate and to look at this forensically in terms of how our elections are conducted and to deal with any vulnerabilities that exist. I don't think there's any doubt that our elections have vulnerabilities, and we need to address those. It's a timeliness issue, and it's a methodology issue. How are we going to do it? Is it going to be funded appropriately? And what is going to be, as John suggested, what's going to be the time span under which we take this effort? And I think that it's worthy of discussion and investment going forward, because it's clear that the president's message has gotten through to a fairly large segment of our population that now questions one of the main underpinnings of our democracy, and that is how we elect people. So we have to deal with that. Now, we can cast blame on whomever might have caused that, and I put a lot of blame on the president going back all the way to 2020 and what happened in January. But I think that we need to address it, but we have to do it in a very thoughtful, very deliberate way. We can't rush this through. And make no mistake, if you look at Project 2025, and if you look at what the president's talking about, he wants to implement this before the 2026 elections. And I think that is pure folly, and we have to dismiss that outright. And one other point I want to make about President Trump and why I have difficulty believing his sincerity on this subject. He, in 2025, 3 months into his term, he was so concerned about election security that he cut $300 million from the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. That agency is responsible for helping the states secure their elections. He cut their budget. He also recently fired all the commissioners on and let me get this right, the Commission for U.S. Election Assistance. These are the folks, too, who are the liaison between the federal election officials and the state officials to help them run elections. So his actions are not matching up with his rhetoric. And I think folks have to understand that it undercuts his argument about changing this law so quickly. So bottom line is, I listened to the speech intently last night. I didn't see anything that persuaded me to any action that has to be taken before 2026. If you want to talk about 2028, I'm all ears.
Well, and I think if we can just say that we need to take a look at, take Trump out of it, that we need to take a look at the elections, the system and how it works. Let's not forget the days of the dangling and dimpled chads, right, of 2000, and the big drumbeat that Bush was never elected.
Well, those have been fixed.
Well, I understand, but there was the drumbeat that Bush was never elected, that he was selected by the Supreme Court, and all of those, they're not without merit. But we've had a problem for a long time. We need to take a look at it.
30 seconds, last word to Joe Ferretti.
Yeah, I just, Stu Gordon, who was the deputy director of DNI under Trump, indicated that Trump is often guilty at looking at intelligence as a verdict. That's not the way intelligence works. This information has to be studied, no quick conclusions, and no quick solutions to this problem. So I just caution people going forward. It's a long-term analysis that has to be done, and we should go forward the 2026 election as we're presently postured.
Talk Radio WRNR Martinsburg. We're back with more after this. We're back on the Friday Five. That is Joe Ferretti, first member of our panel with the leadoff segment last half hour. We'll go around the room. New York Times best-selling author John Gilstrap. Good morning.
Good morning.
Here with Michael Carl as well,
Good morning.
Mr. John Doyle,
Good morning, everybody.
and with our second topic here, Mr. Bill Stubblefield.
Thank you, Dylan. Let's go to a subject we've not talked about in quite a while, and that's Iran. 5 months ago, there was an invasion of Iran, and the argument was it's going to be over in 3 to 4 weeks. Also, we're going to go in for regime change, or at the very least, we're going to totally destroy their nuclear weapons. And at the same time, saying how much better it's going to be this time than it was in 2016 with the international agreement that was made. Fast forward, if you will, to where we are today. We're back at a shooting war. We had a kind of a ceasefire for a while with a memorandum of agreement, which no one tended to agree with what was in the agreement. There were the Iranian understanding and the U.S. understanding were in places radically different. We found a lot of our folks, especially guys that we've had around the table, that had great heartburn with the agreement as the U.S. were interpreting. So where we are, we're back at the shooting war again. During that time, Trump briefly proposed a 20% charge on taxes going from ships transiting in and out the Straits of Hormuz, which is something that for our whole 250 years we have, as the U.S. said, it was illegal. Now the president proposed to do that, and he's given Iran legitimacy in trying to do that. We started recycling the earlier threats, the threats that no one seemed to take serious, with the exception of maybe the inner circle within the president's inner circle. These threats have not worked before. And what to me is most surprising, there is no mention whatsoever of deterring the Iranians' nuclear capabilities. That was the number one driver for a lot of the discussion, and now it's not even mentioned. Now it's all economics with the oil. The nuclear capability of Iran is kind of an afterthought. I find it hard to be optimistic about the direction this war has taken, and I'd like to see my colleagues to see if there is some optimism in what they see today.
Let's start with John Gilstrap.
I'm not surprised that you're not finding optimism in Iran's nuclear capability is dead. It's been destroyed. We've got the nuclear dust issue that's buried somewhere under many tons of rock. So I don't think it's the excuse me. I don't think it's the lead story, because it's just not the lead story anymore. One of the big problems about that initial launch into Iran in late February is that we really did decapitate the regime. And when you completely decapitate the regime, and bravo, no heartburn over that at all, but the problem is now you're stuck with nobody to talk to. And whoever would then step up to say, okay, I'm in charge now, he'd get whacked too. So I think negotiating, first of all, with the Iranians who have the regime, not the people, okay? The Iranian is not an honorable regime. They never have been. They're a 50-year world sponsor of terror. And to see them go away, I have no heartburn with it. Right now, I think the president has given Iran as much opportunity to have a peaceful, little p, solution to this, with programs to help them rebuild what we broke and all of this, and they just keep tinkling on the agreement. They're not interested in a peace. I'm not sure what they're interested in. So right now, we've got a new strategy. We've started what they're calling shaping operations, which is targeted suppression of enemy air defenses, preemptive missile and strikes on missile and drone factories, preemptive ones. And we're going to 90-minute blitz tactics, which is kind of new, that's focused on the IRGC compounds. I think I heard on the news this morning, I'm not sure, I should have researched it in the last 10 minutes or so, I think we blew up a bridge or two that heads to one of the IRGC compounds to keep them from being resupplied. So yeah, we're 6 days now. I'm going to guess 7 days soon into an aggressive campaign to further hurt the Iranians. The problem with that is that's not a great way to capture hearts and minds. So I don't know. I'm not a strategist. I'm certainly not a tactician, but I think this is not a war that we can afford to lose. One of the things, and we saw the Democrats in the House try to defund, over 50% of them voted to defund Israel completely. So what's coming up in the next election cycle, I think, is really critical to the world, because I think if we allow Iran to take a breath, to recover from this, we're in seriously deep trouble. I would love to see the president, this isn't a nuclear thing, but I would love to see the president just crush him.
One quick clarification. The House did not vote. The Democrats did not vote to defund Israel. Came very close, but they did not vote to defund Israel.
They did. It didn't pass, but they cast the 50% cast votes
No, they
to
did
defund
not.
them.
They were slightly below 50%.
Okay, 50, a lot of them. I mean,
a lot of them did.
Yes,
exactly.
right.
A lot of them did.
A lot of them.
John Doyle.
I think it was a strategic mistake to decapitate, and by that I mean get rid of the Ayatollah, because we now don't know with whom to negotiate. I think the people in charge are the Revolutionary Guard, the IRGC, who are far more messianic than even the old Ayatollah was. It is the Revolutionary Guard that came up with the idea, okay, we now can control the Strait of Hormuz. The old Ayatollah was adamantly opposed to doing things like that. I do think that when we attacked, had we made sure that the Ayatollah stayed alive, I think we might very well have an agreement right now that was very similar to the 2015 agreement that the Obama administration signed, which was an effective agreement. And we're not going to get anything better than that, certainly not from the IRGC.
Michael Carl.
Well, I agree with virtually everything that Mr. Gilstrap said, and disagree with virtually everything I just heard from Mr. Joel.
That makes me feel good, Mike.
Okay, it confirms our roles. But what Admiral Stubblefield said about there's no mention of the nuclear threat. I can't. I listen to the stuff all the time, and every statement includes a reference to preventing that. And so I support the general effort that's being made. I do think that it's a challenge for sure, but we should not back off at all, and we need to take it to them militarily. And the only challenge, or the biggest challenge, is doing that in a way that gets the bad guys and saves the innocent, the millions of innocent people in that country.
Joe Ferretti on the phone.
Well, the problem with what you guys are advocating for, which is continued military efforts into the future that is ill-defined, is that the American public is not going to stand for that. And there's going to be a political price to pay for one of these never-ending wars that our president campaigned against before he took office. And that's the problem. Look, the lesson from Iran in 1979, after President Carter and Operation Eagle Claw failed to get the hostages out of Iran, the lesson is that there is going to be a political price to pay, and Iran's going to make sure we pay it. There is not going to be, my prediction, no resolution to this situation of Iran before the 2026 elections, because those folks over in the Middle East know that is the real linchpin for President Trump and the Republicans in this country. So they're going to make sure that this is prolonged and costly for this country going forward. And they have exhibited the ability to assume a lot of damage and a lot of turmoil internally in their country in order to prove their point, much like they did in 1979 when they were isolated, sanctioned, but kept those hostages for over 400 days. So that, if you're ready to pay that price and you're ready to assume perhaps even more military deaths and certainly more money being funneled to the military for these continued operations, fine. But with so many problems at home here, I think politically that is going to be a real problem for the president going forward.
Anything else to add before we go back to Bill Stubblefield and the final word?
Yeah, real quick. A year ago, we bombed them for a few days, and the president declared their nuclear threat obliterated. It occurs to me that if that were true, we could have, with deference to George Aiken, declared a great victory and left. The Ayatollah would still have been there, and the Strait of Hormuz would not have been closed.
Bill Stubblefield.
Yeah, and to add on to what John Doyle said, one of the justifications that the president had going to war was that we had to destroy the nuclear capability, yet they'd said that a few months before we had destroyed the nuclear capability. John Gilstrap, you may be right. You say the nuclear capability is dead. I don't think you have any evidence for saying this. I don't really have a lot of evidence to say that you're wrong. It's just that we do not know. And there was evidence prior to going into the war that the U.S. felt that the nuclear capability was not dead. We have not done a single thing since starting the war back 5 months ago. We've not done a single thing to address that nuclear capability. We're not even talking about it anymore. You may be right; it's dead, but but I'm not sure that we can prove this to any person's level of satisfaction.
The only thing I heard there was that John is right. So the rest was just noise.
Let me rephrase it, John. I want to back off a little bit.
I had that same thought. I'm like, oh, he just said John Gilstrap was right. Wow.
I was
Go to commercial. Go to commercial.
I was trying to be nice, and it blew up in my face.
Well, Mr. Gilstrap will kick off topic number 3 for us.
I think these all might be related. What I'm going to. There was news in the Wall Street Journal over the course of this last week, a few days ago, that a number of different polls are showing a precipitous decline in patriotism, which is a weird word we hear on the 250th anniversary of the nation. And patriotism means a lot of different things to different people, and it's not just about agreeing with the current administration. It's about whether or not we are proud to be Americans, whether we are proud or ashamed of our past. And over the course of the last 10 years, certainly, there's been a big drumbeat that we are an imperialist nation, and that we're on other people's lands, and the white supremacy, and all of this that is really hammering the idea of what America is or projects to be. And the results are kind of startling. And I'm going to run through these. 58%, this is a Gallup poll, 58% of Americans said they are extremely or very proud to be American. Just 50%. That's a 25-year low that Gallup has been doing it. And it's interesting, the generational divide. The silent generation, which I presume is my parents' generation, which is certainly precious few, and reducing over time, 83% are proud to be Americans. Baby boomers, for me, 75%. Generation Z is only 41%, which I believe is your generation, right, Dylan? Yep. So, and only 24% of Generation Z Democrats say they are extremely proud or very proud or extremely proud to be an Americans. Wall Street Journal shows that only 35% of Americans say that patriotism is very important. In 2019, that figure was 60%. Young Americans, 18 to 34, 18%. This is according to the Wall Street Journal poll. Among 18 to 34%, only 18% 18 to 34-year-olds, only 18% said patriotism was very important to them. 18, as opposed to 65 and older, where it's 55% said it was. So here I won't. There are a lot of these. So I guess my question to the panel is, we have ups and downs in a country, but if a country begins to lose its central identity as being, truth, justice, and the American way, forces of good over forces of evil, and if we intentionally, either through media, whether it's social media or legitimate media or whatever, new media, if the drumbeat is that we're the bad guys, I believe that actions have consequences. So is the declining patriotism the cause of America's political divisions or simply a symptom of it?
I'll start with John Doyle. If you can, everybody, keep your responses under 2 minutes.
Symptom. I remember the Vietnam War, as do.
I bet you do.
Yeah, as do two of my compatriots here. When I got back from Vietnam, a whole lot of my friends would not say I am a patriotic American. It was just it was a reflection of their disgust with what they thought was a war that should never have been fought. It's a war that I thought should have been fought when I went there, and by the time I go home, I decided it was a serious error, policy error. But anyway, I understood that, but I did not comprehend why they then took this and said, this means I am not patriotic. I think that was what was going on. We've had ups and downs throughout our history. And yes, I think it's a symptom, and it reflects a dissatisfaction among the general public with what is going on politically right now.
Michael Carl.
Well, I think that virtually, not all, but a great deal of this decline that I'm sure is accurately stated is from the elements or portions of the Democratic side, and that is because those particular Democrats are frustrated with the greatness and the virtue of America and America's traditions, and they want to change them. And that to me, that's what's going on. But I think still overwhelmingly most Americans love the tradition of America and our principles.
Joe Ferretti.
Well, I wondered when we were going to get to a left-right debate here, but look, I think we confuse this issue about patriotism a little bit, and I look at it on an individual basis. Sometimes you look at yourself and you don't like the person you've become. Maybe you're overweight, maybe you're not grooming yourself properly, maybe you haven't fulfilled your educational attainment goals or goals that you wanted. So you get to work and you try to change things. I don't think you hate yourself when you undergo that kind of analysis. I think you're trying to improve things, and I think for the better. And I look at that way with the country. I think you can be patriotic, but not like the country that this has become, and you want to change it. Mike Carl says change it, of course, in a political way and make everything left and woke and all that. No, I think in many respects, people desire a country that lives up to its ideals, that lives up to its Declaration of Independence and its Constitution. And I think that is the highest form of patriotism, is to try to improve things for all. So I don't want to get the issue confused that if you don't like the country the way it is now, it's not that you're unpatriotic. It's just that you think that we can do better.
Bill Stubblefield.
And how can we remain patriotic when we continue to hear this downbeat or being beat down that the other guy is so bad? We just got through hearing the second go from Mike Carl. The other guy is so bad. By definition, my side is right. You cannot keep patriotism by hearing your government or other folks tell you that you're wrong in everything. I think we have a fundamental problem. I do disagree a little, Joe Ferretti, a little bit. I trace it very clearly back to the rhetoric we're coming from the senior levels of our government, and I think that it's damaging.
I guess I'd be remiss to not give Mike Carl a chance to say something after he was named by name twice in a row.
Say something, Mike.
Well, I just totally disagree with what Bill said. Is that enough?
That's fair.
That covered?
Back to John Gilstrap.
Well, I do think it comes down to what governments have, leaders of the government have been saying for probably the last 10, 15 years. That MAGA, such as it is all white supremacists, that we're Nazis, that and the other side, we've all heard it, libtard, and all that, just the epithets that are thrown, and the fact that the media, whether it's legitimate or social, just plays up only the negatives of the other side, and the middle of the road, the Democrats that John Doyle and Bill Stubblefield like to talk about, those moderate Democrats, get no voice. The moderate Republicans get no voice. And I think that the average American is somewhere in the middle. And there's a sense of whenever you feel disenfranchised or that you're unvoiced because your message is not only not resonating, but you get primaried. If you're a politician, you get primaried if you don't toe the extreme line. So therefore, you keep your moderate decisions in the middle. This is how we have the surge of the Democratic Socialist Party, whatever it's called, the DSA, I guess, and the Mamdanis and the things we've talked about before. And I think we get the appearance that these people are more influential than they are, but this nation is driven by primaries, and primaries, the average voters, for whatever reasons, don't turn out for them, so we get the crazies on both sides that come out. And until we figure out a way to really celebrate moderation, I think we're in trouble.
I agree with Gilstrap.
As I do.
I do too. Yep. Good point.
It's a good segment there. You got about 45 seconds. I will say, as the Gen Z member of this, I do think that the younger generations may be growing up in a different political reality than the older ones, and it's led to, we've talked about housing, living paycheck to paycheck, how many are in poverty. It feels like younger generations think of the American dream as abstract, something that used to be and isn't anymore. And I think social media has given rise to the atrocities of the bad stuff that comes with foreign interventions and things like that. Like, you look at what are they doing in Israel, Palestine, we're giving them how much money? I think it might stem from stuff like that. But got to cut it off there. And we'll be back with more after this. Back with the Friday Five. On the phone, Mr. Joe Ferretti.
Good morning, everyone.
Michael Carl.
Good morning.
Mr. Bill Stubblefield.
And good morning.
John Gilstrap.
Good morning.
And with our fourth topic, Mr. John Doyle.
Good morning, everybody. And on the fly here, what I'm going to do is combine numbers 1 and 3 that I have. And that is number 1 was the confirmation hearing for Todd Blanche for Attorney General, and number 3 was the confirmation hearing for Jay Clayton for DNI, the Director of National Intelligence. And the reason I'm combining them is this. It has occurred to me just in the last 24 hours. In both cases, you are hearing that there are several Republicans, 2, 3 maybe, who have indicated that they're on the fence. And some of my Democratic friends are saying, how in the world can you be on the fence about these two terrible people? And while I disagree very strongly with the performance of both of them yesterday and the day before in their confirmation hearings, in both cases they were seriously evasive in the questions that came, particularly from many of the Democrats, but actually from some of the Republicans on the two panels as well, the two Senate committees. But it occurs to me that maybe what is going on with people like John Cornyn and Tom Tillis in particular, Tillis from North Carolina, who is retiring, John Cornyn of Texas, who was defeated in his primary, and many of my Democratic friends think, well, listen, they're free of Donald Trump. Why can't they show a little guts and oppose these people? I think what is going on is this, or what might be going on. I think they may have concluded that in each case, if the person before them is not confirmed, they'll end up having somebody worse being confirmed. I think it may very well be a simply a strategic decision on the part of Republicans who really don't think these two people should be in charge of the departments that the president has nominated them to be in charge of, but a fear that if they're not confirmed, that things will be worse. And so I will throw that out, and I realize I'm asking a real reach for my two conservative compatriots here sitting across the table from me. Try to put yourselves in the mind of a Democrat or an anti-Trump Republican who's looking at this, and try to envision how they might think and see if you can come up with whatever answer you wish.
I'll go to this side of the table first on that then. John Gilstrap.
Todd Blanche and Jay Clayton, I separate my thoughts between the two. I think the DNI is a nothing burger, take Joe's term, of a position. DNI doesn't really do anything. A lot of people report to him, but he can be as involved or disinvolved as he wants. It's kind of a placeholder, and I think actually the job of the upcoming DNI is going to be to shrink drastically the ODNI, which is the Office of Director of National Intelligence. So I don't care. I really don't care who's in that job. When it comes to Todd Blanche, though, I do care. I think the optics of having Todd Blanche as the Attorney General are wrong. He was the president's personal lawyer, and just as I think it's important to embrace the discomfort that many on the right feel about the way the elections happened, and that from that comes a certain level of discomfort and distrust that must be respected from the other side. I think that the right needs to understand that with Todd Blanche having been the president's personal lawyer through some difficult times, that the optics of him being the Attorney General are wrong.
Let's go to the resident attorney on the panel, Joe Ferretti, next.
Yeah, John, I agree with that. And let me bring up one thing that some people think is trivial and perhaps beating a dead horse, but it happens in both of these committee hearings on these folks' nominations to these positions. They're always asked, and everybody's asked who's nominated by the president, who won the 2020 election. Now, that may sound redundant, ridiculous, but the bottom line here is we're looking for people who are able to speak truth to power, especially from the Attorney General's office, who oftentimes has to advise the president of the standing of certain legal issues that confront the White House and the country. If you don't have a person in that position who will tell the president what he needs to hear instead of what he wants to hear, you're at risk for some major issues. In December of 2020, the President Trump wanted to seize voting machines in Georgia. Attorney General Barr said that the whole argument about a faulty election was BS, and he told the president, you can't do that. That we were on a nice edge to a major constitutional crisis right there. And if we have any doubts that Todd Blanche is going to be able to have that kind of discussion with President Trump, having been President Trump's personal lawyer in the past, I think we got a problem going forward. And that is why those questions about the 2020 election to these nominees were so pertinent.
If I may, on that, that's denying the soundbite. I don't think that's taking a position. I think it's a cheap question, it's a stupid question, and I think that by saying, I forget what their workaround was, that Joe Biden was elected, or whatever was the...
Certified is what
certified. Okay. Answering the question, but not answering the question, because just to avoid the soundbite is my thought. That's how I took it.
It's not a soundbite, John. It's a fact.
Well, no. But if the nominee were to go up there and say exactly what the Democratic senator or congressman, representative is asking them, that becomes the soundbite, and that drives the news cycle for the next 2 days. So by denying it.
What news cycle? It's not news. It's just they're trying to placate the one individual that they have to counsel. They don't want to upset him. That's the
pundit cycle. How's that?
Well, I don't see that as all that important when everybody knows we won the election.
Exactly. So why ask the question?
Because they won't admit it, which reveals that they won't speak truth to power. That's disqualifying.
Well, my response is very simple. I support both nominees, but I also support forgetting about and stop referring to the 2020 election issue at all. It's over. We've moved on, and it's a mistake to continue to trash around with it.
And I'll throw in a point, just in terms of like journalism or someone in the position that Ossoff was of asking tough questions. Going into asking a question like that a non-answer is an answer. So you're asking that question knowing, well, if he doesn't give an actual answer, that is telling in and of itself. But over to Bill Stubblefield.
Yeah, John Doyle, I was kind of sorry you merged these two together, because I think they're two separate issues. John Gilstrap mentioned he thought the DNI was a nothing burger. I disagree with that. I think the DNI plays a very critical role. Blanche has demonstrated that he's very little besides being a lapdog. He's going to do whatever the president wants him to do. Clayton's a different story. Clayton has been a man of integrity through the years. I think he'll be a good manager. He fills in neatly with what that job needs, not like the current occupant of that particular position, who's there just to eliminate and to reduce. You asked the question, will they be confirmed? I think the Republican members of the Senate are going to have much more difficult time sleeping at night if they confirm Blanche than what if they confirm Clayton. And I think it is going to come down to one or two people, and I don't think it's going to be done on merit as much as it is political pressure.
John Doyle.
Bill, thank you. By giving the answer you gave, I think you, at least in my mind, you reaffirmed why I phrased the question the way I did. I wanted to get a discussion about whether they are similar or different. I do agree with you. I actually think that I think Blanche will not be confirmed, simply because now I think he'll get out of the committee, but. And I mentioned this yesterday when I was on with John Gilstrap. I believe if Susan Collins votes to confirm Todd Blanche, she will cook her goose in her reelection. I think she's going to be reelected if she votes to not confirm Todd Blanche. But because she's got 9 lives. I don't think any Democrat can beat her. I think even before the flap about Graham Plattner, she was going to win no matter what. But if she votes to confirm Todd Blanche, I think she cooks her goose. And incidentally, I agree with you, Bill, about the quality of the two people.
All right, let's move on to our fifth and final topic, starting with Mr. Mike Carl.
Well, I'm going to throw out the open, objective question that I always do.
Yes, he was the worst president ever.
You're talking about James Buchanan?
Yeah. What was the purpose of the Democrats' intentional opening of the border to illegal aliens? What do you think?
Let's go to Bill Stubblefield.
Yeah, I think that was the where the Bernie Sanders and the Patricia and Warren had the upper hand for a while. I think it was a mistake for that to do that, but they were Biden was catering to the very extreme progressive wing of the Democratic Party. We're not seeing anything. We're seeing something very similar with what we've with Trump and catering, responding to the pressure from the MAGA unit. Most recently, this decision to stop the ICE stopping the automobiles going. Trump overruled that because of pressure from the MAGA party. So we're seeing it both ways. But I do think it was a mistake of Biden catering to the progressive unit.
Joe Ferretti.
Well, I reject the premise that the borders were open, like we didn't have border patrol, like we didn't have deportation proceedings, like we didn't have a processing of people coming across the border. The problem was in the execution. But we still had all those things. If you go back and look at the stats, President Biden deported as many people in his last year of his term than Trump did in his first year. And so going forward, I don't think that we can just assume that the border was open. That's more rhetoric than anything. But I think we can find fault with how this process was handled. And when the folks in South America and Mexico hear that there is a better chance of gaining entry and of staying in the country on a temporary status with the current administration in charge, naturally they're coming. And that was the problem that the Biden administration failed to plan for, was an influx of people who were coming in here after getting the stiff arm from the first Trump administration. So the Biden people, I think, were caught short in terms of funding, in terms of personnel, in terms of having immigration judges in place to process these people. They got overrun, and yes, a lot of people came in here and stayed illegally. But I don't think we can say it was open. I think we can say that it was, unfortunately, the door was ajar, and nobody was there to make sure that these people were going to be processed, and we lost a lot of folks. So yes, there was a real problem there. The Biden administration and Kamala Harris paid for that in the 2024 election.
John Gilstrap.
So the cop comes into your house and says, "How did the burglar get in?" "Well, I don't know." And he says, "Was your door open?" And you say, "No, it was just ajar." The burglar is there illegally because you let him in, or perhaps not intentionally. And I don't think there was an intent I think we presume that the Biden administration had intent in any of this. I think that it was window dressing, that look at us. It goes to what I was talking about before, where we were painting ourselves as the world's bad guys, and if we let everybody in, we can be the world's good guys. And the intentional blindness, perhaps, that sure, we can have as many people come in to get health care and to get the benefits that are the, let's say, the not large wage earners who are actually providing the tax base. Nobody was thinking this thing through at all. Now, let me add this. That was a long time ago now. I think it's a mistake to continue, just as it's a mistake to continue to talk about the 2020 election, it's a mistake to continue to talk about the open borders that are now closed. Now we have to deal with the human consequence of this, that I think we tricked a lot of immigrants to come in on the assumption that they're not going to be prosecuted, that they can disobey the immigration laws and they're going to have a free ride. And now comes the new administration that says, no, actually you broke the laws and there has to be a consequence. I think it's really unfortunate. I think it was a terrible thing for the former administration to do. But the fact of the open borders is no longer a thing. Now we have to deal with the result, and that's what we should concentrate on. Why we got here, it doesn't matter to me.
Before I get to Mr. Doyle here, I'd like to ask Bill for a second. You mentioned the Bernie Sanders wing. Maybe I'm just not as well versed on the topic, and so Doyle and Ferretti can jump in on this if they want. The difference in position between, say, the progressive wing and the more centrist wing on those immigration issues, and what concessions were made to the progressive wing.
Well, let me back up. I kind of agree with what Joe Ferretti said, that the border was never totally open, but there was a leniency that was being pushed very hard by the more progressive wing. And the more centralist Democrats was not pushed in the same degree that the Bernie Sanders was.
Okay, Mr. Doyle.
As a, quote, centrist Democrat, unquote, I agree with Bill. I also think it was a serious strategic error. I think the Biden administration presumed that they could fix the problem. I think they referred to it at the core. And this is why they assigned Vice President Harris to go talk to all of these Central American dictators and try and say, listen, why don't you be a little bit nicer to your subjects, and more of them will want to stay in your country. And I think the Biden administration actually thought that might work.
And they also paid a lot as well. They paid these third world countries a great amount of money to keep these folks.
That's exactly right, and it didn't work. The dictators took the money and did nothing. And I also think it was a reaction to the first Trump administration taking all these folks that were just coming in, separating families, keeping them all locked up, and the very bad look from that. And it was an overreaction. And I think now Trump's approach, get rid of everybody who's here illegally, even good people who are not otherwise breaking the law, is also an overreaction to the Biden administration. And one of these days, we're going to get an administration that's going to listen to Richard Lankford, the very conservative senator from Oklahoma, who says we should close the border and treat everybody that's here fairly. I mean, that is, to me, a simple thing. And that's really what we did back when Ronald Reagan was president, and he and a Democratic congressman from Kentucky named Romano Mazzoli came up with an immigration bill that worked for at least 20 years. And that's what they've got to do now.
I'm actually glad that you brought up Reagan specifically, because I was going to pose kind of a question to the group before we got back to Michael Carl for the last point on this, final word on this, was that I know that a point that gets brought up a lot of times that I don't hear much in the Friday Five, at least, is the impact of foreign intervention leading to migration out of countries, eventually to the United States. And I realize that if I bring up the Sandinistas, we're talking about 40 years ago, but Mr. Doyle brought up Reagan. So it went back to that time period in my mind. What do we think about that impact on an issue such as this? And I'll throw that open to the group.
Very quickly. I don't think we're talking about the immigration in the country. I don't think it's been driven so much for political as it is economic reasons.
Well, and I think the Vietnamese population we have in the United States was largely driven by the refugees who came from Vietnam and realized that the doors are open here. Certainly, I had never heard, growing up, I never heard a Vietnamese name, and now there are many lovely people, but they came here legally.
I'm still waiting for Congress to attack this issue.
Yeah, exactly.
I am too.
I don't think they want to. I think this is one of these things.
They did, John. They wanted to. They were ready to do
And
this.
Trump stopped them.
And Trump stopped them.
There was never,
Langford-
and they knew that would happen. I think this is the kind of issue. I used to work for a trade association. And they said solving an issue means we'd have to come up with another issue. So people like the churn, and as long as we have the immigration thing to knock around, both sides have something to talk about. I don't think anybody in Washington really wants to solve it.
I hope you're wrong, John.
I hope
you're
too.
wrong. Man, that would be a mistake.
That's what they thought during Reagan, and it worked then.
Michael Carr closes out.
I'm shocked to hear Mr. Doyle refer to him as a central Democrat, but centrist Democrat. But regardless, the question is still huge. The immigration issue, and it also implicates the birthright citizenship interpretation and what that means. And I think that's going to be a big focus of debate for quite a while.
All right, we'll come back with a final minute after this. Final 8 seconds and the final minute here from our panel. Start with Joe Ferretti on the phone.
I'm afraid West Virginia is going to find a new weight loss supplement. It's called Taco Bell lettuce.
John Doyle.
If the Nationals can get a bullpen, they make the playoffs.
Bill Stubblefield.
Did a nice job this week, Dylan. Well done.
Thank you. Mr. Carl.
When Rob was here last week, I closed with Go Bucks, and they swept the Brewers, so I'm saying Go Cards.
John Gilstrap.
I start my binging of CATF on Sunday. Can't wait.
That'll wrap things up. Rob Mario is back in 70 short hours. This is Talk Radio WRNR Martinsburg and TV 10. Dave Ramsey Show is next.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.